Dean Martin was 73 years old and hadn't left his house in 6 months. Not for groceries, not for doctor's appointments, not for anything. The world outside his Beverly Hills home had become too loud, too fast, too much. He sat in his bedroom most days, staring at photographs, drinking coffee, waiting for time to pass. May 16th, 1990, Wednesday. The phone rang at 6:47 in the morning. Dean didn't answer. He never answered anymore. Let the machine pick up, let whoever it was leave a message, let the world handle itself without him. But the phone kept ringing. 15 times, 20. Someone was desperate to reach him. Finally, Dean's housekeeper, Maria, knocked on his bedroom door. "Mr. Martin, it's Frank. He says it's urgent. He says you need to pick up." Dean's hand shook as he reached for the phone. But Frank Sinatra never called this early, never insisted. Something was wrong. Yeah, Frank's voice was broken, destroyed. "Dean, he's gone. Sammy's gone." The room tilted. Dean sat down hard on the edge of his bed. "When?" "This morning, 5:30. Throat cancer finally took him. He fought it for 2 years, but it got him anyway. He's gone, Dean. Our boy is gone." Dean couldn't speak. His throat closed up. His chest felt like someone had placed a boulder on it. Sammy Davis Jr., his friend for 40 years, his partner, his brother in ways that had nothing to do with blood. Gone. "Dean, you still there?" "Yeah. The funeral's Saturday, Forest Lawn, 11 in the morning. You need to be there." "I can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "I can't do it, Frank. I can't watch them put him in the ground. I can't stand up in front of people. I can't. I just can't." "Dean, this is Sammy. This is our Sammy. You have to be there. Find someone else to speak. Get Shirley, get Altavis, get anyone. I can't do this. Nobody else can do what you can do. Nobody else loved him the way you did. He'd want you there. He'd understand why I'm not." Frank's voice got hard. "You're going to hide in that house for the rest of your life? You're going to let Sammy go into the ground without saying goodbye? That's not the Dean I know. That's not the man who stood on stage with us for 30 years. That man's dead, Frank. He died when my son crashed that plane. He died when everything good in the world disappeared. I'm just what's left. And what's left isn't strong enough to bury Sammy." "Then get strong enough. You've got 3 days. Figure it out." Frank hung up. Dean sat there holding the phone, listening to the dial tone, feeling the weight of 40 years pressing down on him. Sammy Davis Jr., the kid with one eye and more talent than anyone in show business, the kid who could sing, dance, act, play instruments, do impressions, make people laugh, make people cry, make people feel things they didn't know they could feel. The kid who'd faced more racism and hatred than anyone should have to face and kept smiling anyway, kept performing anyway, kept believing in the world anyway. Dean's best friend, Dean's brother, Dean's reminder that joy was possible even when everything else was falling apart. Gone. Dean walked to his closet, opened it, looked at the suits hanging there. Black suits for funerals. He'd worn too many of them lately. His son Dean Paul in 1987. His mother in 1989. Now Sammy. The people he loved kept dying, and Dean kept having to put on black suits and pretend he could survive losing them. He pulled out a black suit, laid it on the bed, stared at it. Tried to imagine walking into that funeral, seeing Sammy's casket, seeing Frank and Shirley MacLaine and all the Rat Pack people pretending they were okay. Seeing Altavis, Sammy's widow, destroyed by grief. Seeing Sammy's children trying to understand why their father was gone. Dean couldn't do it, couldn't face it, couldn't be the strong one when he had nothing left inside him. But then he remembered something Sammy had said. 1987, right after Dean Paul died. Dean had been in bed for 3 weeks. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't talk, wouldn't do anything except stare at the ceiling and wonder why God took his son. Sammy had shown up, walked into Dean's bedroom without asking, sat on the edge of the bed. "I'm not leaving until you talk to me." "Go away, Sam." "Nope, I'm staying right here. I'll sleep here if I have to. I'll move in, whatever it takes." "There's nothing to say. My son is dead. That's it. That's the whole story." "No, it's not. The story is that you loved him. The story is that you were an incredible father. The story is that he knew how much you cared, and that matters. That doesn't disappear just because he died. It doesn't matter anymore. Nothing matters anymore." Sammy had grabbed Dean's face, forced him to look at him. "Listen to me. You don't get to quit. You don't get to give up, because people need you. I need you. Frank needs you. Your other kids need you. And Dean Paul, wherever he is, needs you to keep living, to keep being the man who raised him, the man who taught him how to be strong. I'm not strong." "Yes, you are. You're the strongest person I know. You just forgot because the pain is so big. But the strength is still there. Under the pain. Waiting for you to remember it." Dean had cried then. For the first time since the funeral, deep, ugly crying, the kind that empties you out. And Sammy had held him, let him cry, didn't try to fix it, just was there. Now Sammy was gone, and Dean was the one who had to be strong, had to show up, had to remember that strength Sammy said was still there under the pain. Thursday morning. Dean called Frank back. I'll be there. Thank God, I thought I lost both of you. What do you want me to do? Whatever you want. Speak if you can. Just be there if you can. But Dean, people need to see you. Need to know you're still alive. Need to see that the Rat Pack meant something, even though most of us are gone now. Okay? You doing okay? Really? No, but I'll get through Saturday. After that, I don't know. But I'll get through Saturday. Dean spent Thursday and Friday in his bedroom writing, crossing out, writing again, trying to find words that could capture 40 years of friendship, 40 years of stages and dressing rooms and late nights and laughter, 40 years of Sammy making everything better just by being in the room. He couldn't find the words. Every time he tried to write something, it felt wrong. Too formal, too casual, too much, not enough. Nothing captured what Sammy had meant. Nothing came close. Friday night, Dean gave up on writing. He decided he'd just speak from his heart, say whatever came to him when he stood up there. Trust that the right words would come because they always had before. Back when he could still trust himself, back when grief hadn't hollowed him out. Saturday morning, May 19th, 1990. Dean woke up at 5, couldn't sleep, kept seeing Sammy's face, kept hearing his laugh, that distinctive Sammy laugh that could fill a room, that made everyone around him start laughing too, even if they didn't know what was funny. Maria helped Dean get dressed. The black suit fit loose. Dean had lost 30 pounds since his son died, hadn't been eating, hadn't been doing much of anything except existing. The suit that used to fit perfectly now hung on him like he was a child playing dress-up in his father's clothes. You look good, mister. Martin? I look like death. You look like a man who's been through hell and survived. That's different. I'm not sure I survived. You're standing. You're breathing. You're going to honor your friend. That's surviving. The drive to Forest Lawn Memorial Park took 35 minutes. Dean sat in the back of the car watching Los Angeles pass by. The city had changed so much since he'd first arrived in 1946. Nothing looked the same. Nothing felt the same. He was a ghost moving through a world that had forgotten him. The cemetery was packed, cars everywhere, news crews, photographers, fans standing at the gates hoping to catch a glimpse of celebrities. Sammy's death had been front-page news, the last of the Rat Pack, the end of an era. Everyone wanted to see it, document it, turn grief into content. Dean's driver pulled up to a side entrance. Private. Away from the cameras, Frank had arranged it. Knew Dean couldn't handle the press, couldn't handle people shouting questions, couldn't handle being Dino when he barely remembered how to be Dean. Inside the chapel, 200 people were already seated. Dean recognized most of them. Old Vegas people, Hollywood people, musicians and comedians and actors who'd worked with Sammy over 50 years of show business. Everyone dressed in black, everyone crying or trying not to cry. Frank saw Dean come in, walked over, hugged him hard. Thank you for coming. Where else would I be? I know how hard this is for you, after your son, after everything. But Sammy would be so happy you're here. Is that him? Dean gestured toward the closed casket at the front of the chapel. Yeah. They're not opening it. His face, the cancer, it was bad at the end. Altavise wants people to remember him how he was. Dean walked slowly toward the casket. Black, simple, a spray of white flowers on top. Inside that box was Sammy Davis Jr., the kid who'd befriended Dean in 1950, who'd stood on stages with him for 4 decades, who'd made him laugh harder than anyone else could, who'd been there for every important moment in Dean's life. Dean reached out, touched the casket, cold, smooth. He wanted to say something, wanted to tell Sammy he was sorry. Sorry for not visiting more at the end. Sorry for being too lost in his own grief to be there when Sammy was dying. Sorry for not being the friend Sammy deserved, but no words came. Just tears. Silent tears running down Dean's face while 200 people watched him say goodbye to his best friend. Shirley MacLaine appeared beside him, put her arm around his waist. He loved you so much. I loved him too. I know, everyone knows, you two were special together. The service started at 11 exactly. The minister spoke first. Generic words about death and heaven and God's plan. Words that meant nothing and everything. Words people said at funerals, because what else was there to say when someone irreplaceable was gone? Then Altavise spoke. Sammy's wife of 20 years. She was destroyed, could barely stand, could barely get words out. She talked about Sammy's kindness, his generosity, how he'd given everything to everyone and never asked for anything back, how he'd worked until the cancer made it impossible, how even at the end he'd been making jokes, trying to make the nurses laugh, trying to make dying easier for everyone around him. That was Sammy, she said through tears, always performing, always making sure everyone else was okay even when he was falling apart. I loved him more than words can say, and I'll miss him every single day for the rest of my life. She broke down completely, couldn't continue, had to be helped back to her seat by her daughter. Then Jesse Jackson spoke, talked about Sammy's role in the civil rights movement, how he'd marched, donated money, used his fame to push for change, how he'd faced hatred and racism his entire career and never let it make him bitter, never let it kill his spirit. Sammy Davis Jr. was a warrior, Jackson said. He fought with joy, with talent, with an unshakable belief that love could overcome hate, that art could change hearts, that one man with courage could make a difference. He won that fight. He changed this country. He made it better, and we will honor him by continuing the work he started. The crowd applauded, not loud, respectful, appreciative. Then Frank stood up, walked to the podium. He looked old, fragile, like the weight of burying another friend might actually kill him. I've given a lot of eulogies, Frank said. His voice was shaking. Too many. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of saying goodbye to people I love. I'm tired of standing up here trying to find words that don't exist, because there are no words for this, no words that can explain what Sammy meant, what he gave us, what we've lost. Frank paused, composed himself. Sammy was the most talented person I've ever known. Could do anything. Sing, dance, play instruments, act, do impressions. He could have been the biggest star in the world if the world had let him. But the world didn't let him, because he was black. Because this country couldn't handle a black man being that good, that talented, that successful. So they put limits on him, told him where he could perform, where he could stay, who he could marry. And he dealt with all of it with more grace than anyone had a right to expect. Frank's voice got harder, angry. Sammy deserved better. He deserved to be recognized for the genius he was. He deserved to perform anywhere he wanted, live anywhere he wanted, be with anyone he wanted without people threatening his life. This country owes him an apology, owes him recognition. It owes him everything he never got while he was alive. People were nodding, crying harder. Frank was right. Everyone knew it. But here's what I want you to know about Sammy, Frank continued. Despite everything, despite all the racism and hatred and limitations, he was happy, genuinely happy, found joy in the work, in the friendships, in the moments on stage when he could make people forget their problems for 2 hours. That was his gift. Not just the talent, the joy, the refusal to let the world's ugliness kill his spirit. Frank looked directly at the casket. I love you, Sam. You were my brother, my friend, my inspiration. And I promise I'll keep your memory alive. I'll make sure people know who you really were, what you overcame, what you achieved, what you meant. He walked back to his seat, sat down heavily, and put his face in his hands, the strongest man Dean had ever known breaking under the weight of grief. The minister spoke again. We have one more person who'd like to say something. Dean Martin. The chapel went silent. Dean Martin hadn't been seen in public in months. Rumors had been circulating that he was dying, that he'd given up on life, that he'd become a hermit. Now, here he was, walking slowly to the front of the chapel, looking thin and frail and old. Dean reached the podium, gripped it to steady himself, looked out at 200 faces, all of them waiting, wondering if he could do this, wondering if he even had words left after everything he'd lost. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He tried again. Still nothing. His voice was gone, locked somewhere inside him under years of grief. Dean stood there in silence. 10 seconds. 20? 30? People started shifting uncomfortably. Was he okay? Should someone help him? Frank started to stand up, ready to intervene if needed. Then Dean's voice came back, quiet, rough, but there. I can't do this the normal way, can't give you a polished eulogy, can't stand here and tell stories that make everyone feel better. Because I don't feel better, I feel destroyed, and I think lying about that would be an insult to Sammy. He paused, took a shaky breath. Sammy Davis Jr. was my best friend for 40 years, not my work friend, not my Vegas friend, my actual best friend, the person I called when I needed to talk, the person who showed up when I needed help, the person who knew me better than I knew myself sometimes. Dean's hands were shaking. He gripped the podium harder. When my son died 3 years ago, but I wanted to die too. Wanted to just stop existing because the pain was too big, too much. I couldn't see any reason to keep going, and I probably wouldn't have kept going except Sammy wouldn't let me quit. He showed up at my house every single day for 3 months, sat with me, talked to me, sometimes just sat in silence because that's what I needed. He saved my life, literally saved it, because he refused to let me disappear. People were crying openly now. This wasn't a polished eulogy. This was raw grief, real pain, the kind that couldn't be packaged neatly. And now he's gone. And I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to be in a world without Sammy in it. Don't know how to walk on a stage again, how to tell a joke again, how to do anything that reminds me he's not here anymore. Dean's voice broke completely. He couldn't continue, just stood there crying, not trying to hide it, not trying to be strong, just crying in front of 200 people because his best friend was dead and there was no way to make that okay. Frank stood up, started walking toward Dean, ready to help him off the stage, give him permission to stop, but Dean held up a hand. Wait, there's something else, something I need to do. He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a piece of paper, unfolded it with shaking hands. Sammy asked me for something 3 weeks before he died. He called me. Could barely talk. The cancer had taken his voice, but he managed to say what he needed to say. He asked me to sing at his funeral. One song. The song we used to sing together when we were starting out, before we were famous. Before we were anything except two kids who loved music. Dean looked at the paper. I haven't sung in 3 years. Haven't even tried. Didn't think I could anymore. Didn't think I had anything left inside me that could make music. But Sammy asked. And I can't say no to Sammy, even now, even when he's gone. The chapel was completely silent. Dean looked at Frank. Can someone play for me? A man Dean didn't recognize stood up from the 4th row. I can play. I'm a pianist. Worked with Sammy for 15 years. What do you need? Me and my shadow. Can you do that? The pianist nodded, walked to the piano in the corner, sat down, put his hands on the keys, waited. Dean closed his eyes, took several deep breaths. Then he nodded. The piano started. Soft, slow. The opening bars of Me and My Shadow. The song Dean and Sammy had performed together hundreds of times. The song that had become their signature. The song that represented their friendship. Dean started singing. Me and My Shadow, strolling down the avenue. His voice was broken, rough. Nothing like the smooth Dean Martin voice that had sold millions of records. But it was honest, real, filled with 40 years of friendship. Me and My Shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. Tears were streaming down Dean's face, but he kept singing, kept pushing through. And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stair. We never knock, for nobody's there. He opened his eyes, looked at Sammy's casket, sang directly to it. Just me and my shadow, all alone and feeling blue. His voice cracked on that last word. Blue. The way they both felt so many times. The way Dean felt now without Sammy beside him. Dean couldn't continue. His voice gave out completely. He stood there gasping, trying to catch his breath, trying to hold himself together. Then something happened that nobody expected. Frank Sinatra stood up, walked to Dean's side, started singing. Like me and my shadow, strolling down the avenue. His voice was rough too, old but strong enough to carry the melody. Shirley MacLaine stood up, joined them. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. One by one, people in the chapel stood, started singing. The pianist played louder, and 200 voices filled that chapel, singing Me and My Shadow, singing for Sammy, singing because it was the only thing they could do that felt like enough. Dean collapsed, literally collapsed. His legs gave out. Frank caught him, held him up. And they finished the song together. Frank holding Dean, both of them crying, both of them singing to their friend who couldn't hear them anymore but who they needed to sing to anyway. When the song ended, the chapel stayed silent for a long moment. Then someone started applauding. Then everyone was on their feet, applauding Dean for finding the strength to sing, applauding Sammy for inspiring that kind of love, applauding the friendship that had lasted 40 years and would last forever in memory. Dean couldn't stand anymore. Frank helped him to a seat, sat next to him, held his hand. 2 old men who'd lost their third. 2 survivors who didn't know how to survive this loss but were trying anyway. The service ended. People filed past the casket, said their final goodbyes. Dean couldn't move, couldn't stand up. Just couldn't face walking past that casket knowing Sammy was inside it, knowing he'd never hear that laugh again, never see that smile again, never feel Sammy's hand on his shoulder telling him everything would be okay. After everyone else left, Frank helped Dean stand. You ready? No. Me neither, but we have to say goodbye. They walked to the casket together, stood there looking at the white flowers, the polished wood, the finality of it all. Goodbye, Sam, Frank said quietly. Thank you for everything. Thank you for the music and the laughter and the friendship. Thank you for being exactly who you were. We'll miss you every single day. Dean couldn't speak, just placed his hand on the casket one more time, felt the cold wood under his palm. Dean tried to memorize this moment because it was the last time he'd be this close to his best friend. Then he did something that made Frank start crying all over again. Dean pulled something out of his pocket, a small object. He placed it on top of the casket, gently, carefully. It was a glass eye, Sammy's glass eye, the one he'd lost in the car accident in 1954, the one he'd given to Dean as a joke years ago. Hold on to this for me, Sammy had said, in case I need it in the afterlife. Dean had kept it for 36 years, carried it with him, a reminder of Sammy's humor, his resilience, his refusal to let tragedy define him. You can have it back now, Sam, Dean whispered. You might need it where you're going. And I won't need it anymore because you won't be here to joke about it. Frank put his arm around Dean's shoulders. Come on, let's go home. They walked out of the chapel together, into the bright Los Angeles sunshine, into a world that felt emptier than it had that morning, into whatever came next when one of your best friends was gone and you had to figure out how to keep living anyway. The burial was private, just family. Dean didn't stay for it, couldn't watch them lower Sammy into the ground, couldn't see that final moment. It was too much, more than he could handle. He went home, back to his bedroom, back to the photographs and the silence and the waiting for time to pass. But something was different now. Something had shifted during that funeral, during that song, during the moment when he'd found his voice again after thinking it was gone forever. Sammy had asked him to sing, and Dean had done it, had found the strength somewhere, had pushed through the pain and the fear and the grief, and had honored his friend the only way he knew how. With music, with honesty, with love. 3 days after the funeral, Dean received a package, no return address, just his name and address on the front. He opened it carefully. Inside was a videotape. A note was attached in Altavise's handwriting. Dean, Sammy recorded this 2 weeks before he died. He made me promise to send it to you after the funeral. I don't know what's on it. He said it was just for you. Love, Altavise. Dean's hands shook as he put the tape in his VCR, pressed play. The screen flickered. Then Sammy's face appeared. He looked terrible. Thin, gaunt. The cancer had ravaged his body, but his eye, that one good eye, still had light in it, still had that Sammy sparkle. Hey, Dean. His voice was barely a whisper. The cancer had destroyed his throat. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and you're probably a mess. I know you. I know how you deal with loss. You hide. You disappear. You convince yourself you can't go on. Well, I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. Even sick, even dying, even on a video recording made from beyond the grave. Sammy was still calling Dean on his stuff. You can go on. You will go on, because you're Dean Martin, because you're stronger than you think you are, because people still need you even if you don't believe that right now. Sammy coughed, painful, wet. Took him a minute to recover. I need you to do something for me. I need you to keep singing. I don't care if it's just in your shower. I don't care if it's just for yourself, but don't let grief kill your voice. Don't let losing me mean you lose music too. That would break my heart, and I'm pretty sure even dead people can have their hearts broken. He smiled, weak but genuine. I've loved you for 40 years, Dean. You've been my brother, my friend, my safe place in a world that was often cruel. You made me laugh when I wanted to cry. You stood by me when other people ran. You saw me as a person instead of just a talented Negro. That meant everything. That means everything. Sammy's eye was wet now. I'm not scared of dying. I've had a good run. More success than I ever dreamed of. More love than I deserved. But I am scared of leaving you alone. Scared you'll give up without me there to keep pushing you. So I'm making you promise something right now, even though I'm dead and can't enforce it. He pointed at the camera, pointed at Dean. Promise me you'll keep living, really living, not just existing in that bedroom waiting to die. Promise me you'll sing again, perform again. Let people hear your voice again. Promise me you'll honor our friendship by remembering that life is worth living even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. Sammy's expression got serious. And Dean, promise me you'll forgive yourself for not visiting more at the end, for being lost in your own grief, for all the things you think you should have done differently. I forgive you. I understand. And I need you to forgive yourself too. Otherwise, the guilt will eat you alive. And I didn't fight this cancer for 2 years just to have you destroy yourself with guilt." He was crying now. "I love you, Dean. I always have. I always will. And wherever I'm going, I'll be watching. Making sure you keep your promise. Making sure you remember that you matter, that your voice matters, that your life matters. Don't forget that. Please, don't forget that." The screen went black. Dean sat there in his dark bedroom, crying. But different than before. Not hopeless crying, something else. Grateful crying maybe, or relieved crying. The crying you do when someone gives you permission to keep going, permission to survive. He rewound the tape, watched it again, and again, memorizing every word, every gesture, every moment of Sammy's face, holding on to this last gift, this final message, this proof that he was loved, that he mattered, that someone believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. Over the next few weeks, Dean started small, started singing in the shower, quiet, tentative. His voice was rough from disuse, but it was there, still there, waiting to be used again. Then he started singing in his bedroom, old songs, Rat Pack songs, songs he and Sammy used to perform together. It hurt like hell, but it also felt right, felt like honoring Sammy, felt like keeping his promise. In July, 2 months after Sammy's funeral, Dean's daughter Dina came to visit. She found him in his music room, the room he hadn't entered in 3 years. He was sitting at the piano, playing, singing, sounding more like himself than he had in years. "Dad?" He stopped, looked up. "Hey, sweetheart. You're singing?" "Yeah, Sammy asked me to. Made me promise I would." "How does it feel?" Dean thought about that. "Painful, but good. Like stretching a muscle that's been frozen. It hurts, but it's the kind of hurt that means healing." Dina sat next to him on the piano bench. "Can I hear something?" Dean played Me and My Shadow, sang it all the way through. His voice cracked in places, broke in others, but he finished it. Finished it for Sammy, finished it for himself, finished it because finishing something felt like proof he was still alive. When he was done, Dina was crying. "That was beautiful, Dad." It was rough. It was honest. That's better than beautiful. Dean kept practicing, kept singing, kept honoring Sammy's request. And slowly, very slowly, he started to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose, reason to wake up in the morning, reason to keep going. And in September, 4 months after the funeral, Frank called. "There's a benefit concert for Sammy's medical debt. Altavisa's drowning in bills from his treatment. We're trying to raise money to help her. I need you to perform." Dean's first instinct was to say no, to hide, to protect himself from the pain of performing without Sammy there. But then he remembered the promise, the videotape, Sammy asking him to keep singing. "Okay. Okay? Just like that?" "Just like that. When is it?" "October 6th, Shrine Auditorium. Will you be ready?" "I don't know, but I'll try." The benefit concert was organized quickly. Big names committed. Sinatra, Liza Minnelli, Ella Fitzgerald, Gregory Hines, everyone who'd loved Sammy, everyone who wanted to help Altavise. Everyone who understood that Sammy had died with over $1 million in medical debt because he'd spent everything he had trying to survive. Dean practiced every day for a month, worked with a vocal coach, got his voice back in shape. It would never be what it was in his prime. He was 73, his voice had aged, but it was still his voice, still carried emotion, still could move people. October 6th, 1990, Shrine Auditorium, sold out, 3,000 people, all the money going to pay off Sammy's debts to help Altavise rebuild her life. Backstage, Dean was terrified. This was his first public performance in 3 years. First time on stage since his son died. First time facing a crowd that would judge him, compare him to his younger self, wonder why he looked so old, so tired, so different. Frank found him in the dressing room. "You nervous?" "Terrified." "Good. That means you care. Remember you said that to me once?" "Did I?" "Long time ago, when I was nervous about a show. You told me being nervous meant I cared. That the day I stopped being nervous was the day I should quit." "I said something smart?" "Occasionally you did. Between the drunk act and the jokes, sometimes you actually made sense." They laughed. First real laugh Dean had felt in months. "Thank you for doing this," Frank said seriously. "For Sammy, for Altavise, for all of us who need to see that we can still do this even though he's gone. I'm doing it because Sammy asked me to, because he made me promise I'd keep singing." "When did he ask you?" "On a videotape, recorded 2 weeks before he died. He knew I'd want to quit, knew I'd hide. So he made me promise I wouldn't. And I'm keeping that promise." Frank's eyes got wet. He knew us too well. He knew everything. That was his gift, seeing people clearly, understanding what they needed even when they didn't know themselves. The show started at 8. One performer after another, each one doing their best, each one raising money, each one honoring Sammy by using their talent to help his widow. At 9:30, Frank introduced Dean. "Ladies and gentlemen, this next performer hasn't been on stage in 3 years. He's been through hell, lost his son, lost his best friend, lost himself for a while. But tonight, he's here, he's standing, he's ready to sing, because that's what Sammy would have wanted. Please welcome my friend, my brother, Dean Martin." The crowd stood, applauded, not polite applause, real applause, happy applause, grateful applause. Because seeing Dean Martin walk onto a stage again felt like witnessing a resurrection. Dean walked out slowly. The spotlight hit him. He looked different than people remembered, thinner, older, fragile, but he was there, present, alive. He reached the microphone, stood there, let the applause wash over him, then he raised his hand. The crowd quieted. "Thank you for coming tonight, for giving money to help Altovise, for remembering Sammy, for caring that he's gone." His voice was shaky but clear. "I'm going to sing one song, the song Sammy and I used to sing together, the song that represented our friendship. I'm going to sing it for him, for Altovise, for everyone who loved him, and for myself. Because singing it reminds me that even though he's gone, what we had was real. What we built together was worth something. And that doesn't disappear just because he died." The piano started. Dean closed his eyes, took a breath, and sang. "Me and my shadow, strolling down the avenue." His voice was rough, imperfect, but honest, real, filled with 40 years of friendship and 4 months of grief. Me and my shadow, not a soul to tell our troubles to. He opened his eyes, looked out at 3,000 people, saw them crying, saw them swaying, saw them remembering Sammy, remembering the Rat Pack, remembering when the world was different and these men ruled Las Vegas and made America laugh. "And when it's 12 o'clock, we climb the stair. We never knock, for nobody's there." Dean's voice broke on that line. Because nobody was there. Sammy was gone. The shadow was gone. Dean was singing alone now. He would always be singing alone now. Just me and my shadow, all alone and feeling blue. He finished the song, stood there in silence, waiting for the pain to subside, waiting for the grief to let him breathe again. Then the crowd erupted. Standing ovation, screaming, crying. 3,000 people on their feet showing Dean that he mattered, that his voice mattered, that coming back mattered. Frank rushed the stage, hugged Dean hard. "You did it. God damn it, you did it. I did it for Sammy. He knows. Wherever he is, he knows. And he's proud of you." Dean performed one more time after that night. Small charity event in 1993. His last public performance before his health failed completely. But that night at the Shrine Auditorium, that night singing Me and My Shadow for Sammy, that was the important one. That was the one that mattered. Because that was the night Dean Martin kept his promise to his best friend. The night he found his voice again after thinking it was gone forever. The night he proved that grief doesn't have to kill you, that loss doesn't have to destroy you, that you can survive losing the people you love most and still find reasons to sing. Dean Martin died on Christmas Day, 1995. 5 years after Sammy. His family was with him, his children, his friends. Frank had died earlier that year, so the Rat Pack was completely gone now. All 3 of them, Dean and Frank and Sammy, together again somewhere else. At Dean's funeral, they played a recording, Me and My Shadow. Dean and Sammy singing together, voices blending perfectly, the way they had for 40 years, the way they always would in memory. Undina spoke at her father's funeral. "My dad kept every promise he ever made, but the most important promise was the one he made to Sammy. He promised he'd keep singing, keep living, keep finding joy even when joy seemed impossible. And he kept that promise for 5 years. 5 years of showing up, of performing when it hurt, of honoring his friend by refusing to give up. That's who my father was, a man who kept his promises, even when keeping them cost him everything." Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. were friends for 40 years. They performed together, laughed together, faced the world together, and when Sammy died, Dean could have quit, could have given up, could have let grief win. But he didn't. Because Sammy asked him not to. Because Sammy believed in him. Because 40 years of friendship meant something, meant everything. That Dean kept the promise. He kept singing. He kept living. He kept honoring his friend by refusing to let grief destroy him. That night, Dean sang at Sammy's funeral left everyone in tears. But what he did after the funeral mattered more. The keeping going. The finding strength when you think strength is impossible. The honoring the dead by staying alive. Dean and Sammy showed what friendship looks like, what love looks like, what keeping promises looks like even when keeping them breaks your heart. Dean kept his promise. Sammy would be proud, Frank would be proud, and somewhere, somehow, they're all together again. The Rat Pack, reunited, singing Me and My Shadow in perfect harmony.